And us this week will mark 2 years since a mother was shot and killed in front of her children in Buffalo, a case that sparked a larger conversation about domestic violence and protections for victims.
It now has renewed attention, with Kiera Hudson's family suing the Cheektowaga Police Department, accusing them of failing to step in against her alleged abuser and killer, her husband.
7:45 a.m., October 5th, 2022. 30-year-old Kiera Hudson stands in front of her bedroom mirror, strapping on a bulletproof vest like it's just another piece of clothing. Her 6-month-old baby cries in the background, while her 2 other children get ready for school, completely unaware that their mother is suiting up for war. This isn't some action movie or military deployment. This is a Tuesday morning in Buffalo, New York, and a mother of 3 is putting on body armor to drop her kids off at school. Kiera adjusts the Kevlar around her chest, takes a deep breath, and grabs her car keys. She's done everything the experts tell domestic violence victims to do: filed police reports, obtained restraining orders, documented every threat, even moved in with her mother for safety. The bulletproof vest was her final insurance policy, her last line of defense against the man who'd already beaten her unconscious on camera just days earlier. She thought she'd covered every angle, anticipated every attack, protected every vital organ that mattered. She was wrong about everything except one thing. Adam Benefield absolutely wanted her dead. 15 minutes later, Kiera's head would explode in front of her 3 children, including that 6-month-old baby who would never hear his mother's voice again. The bulletproof vest that was supposed to save her life became the cruelest joke of all, because her estranged husband had already figured out exactly how to kill a woman who thought she was protected. But here's the part that's going to destroy your faith in the justice system forever. The man who executed Kiera in front of her babies had been released from court just 24 hours earlier. One day. That's how long it took for the system to fail so catastrophically that 3 children watched their mother's brain matter splatter across their car windows. If watching a mother die in a bulletproof vest isn't shocking enough to earn your subscription, I genuinely want to know what is. Comment below and tell me exactly what kind of content would make you hit that button. Because clearly Kevlar couldn't protect Kiera, but your engagement could help protect the next victim. Maybe you need more gore? More graphic details about how her baby's car seat was drenched in blood? Or maybe you think true crime content is exploitative, that I'm profiting off tragedy? Drop a comment defending why this story should stay buried, while her killer gets the gift of silence and anonymity. 3:15 p.m., October 4th, 2022. Cheektowaga Town Court, Judge's Chambers. Adam Benefield sits in handcuffs after spending exactly 3 days in jail for beating his estranged wife so badly that she posted the footage on Facebook as a cry for help. The judge looks at the misdemeanor charges: harassment, criminal mischief, nothing that screams, "This man will commit murder in 18 hours." The gavel comes down, and just like that, a killer walks free. Here's what nobody in that courtroom understood. Those weren't just minor domestic violence charges they were dismissing. They were looking at a terrorist's resume. This was the same man who 22 years earlier had kidnapped his ex-girlfriend at gunpoint, led police on a high-speed chase, then escaped from prison like some kind of criminal mastermind. But because New York's bail reform laws don't allow judges to consider a defendant's dangerousness for misdemeanor charges, Adam Benefield got to walk out of that courthouse with nothing but a worthless piece of paper telling him to stay away from Kiera. The order of protection was issued at 3:27 p.m. By 3:30, Benefield was already planning Kiera's murder, while court clerks were filing paperwork and judges were moving on to their next case. A woman's death warrant had just been signed by the very system that was supposed to protect her. The restraining order wasn't worth the paper it was printed on, and everyone involved knew it. 6:45 p.m. that same evening, Kiera sits at her mother's kitchen table, staring at her phone, waiting for the call that never comes. Nobody from the court bothered to notify her that her would-be killer had been released. No victim advocate reached out to warn her that the man who'd threatened to end her life was back on the streets. She found out the same way most domestic violence victims discover their abusers are free, when he started calling her phone, sending messages, letting her know that a piece of paper couldn't keep him away from her. Her sister Montisa later told reporters that Kiera spent that entire night pacing, checking locks, looking out windows. She knew what was coming. Every domestic violence victim develops that sixth sense, that animal instinct that tells them when their predator is circling closer. Kiera had lived with Adam's violence long enough to recognize the pattern. The calm before the storm, the quiet before the explosion. 11:30 p.m. Kiera posts her final Facebook message, a photo of herself wearing the bulletproof vest with the caption, "If this isn't a cry for help, I don't know what is." The image shows a woman who's done everything right. She's documented the abuse. She's sought legal protection. She's even bought military-grade body armor to protect herself. But look at her eyes in that photo. Those aren't the eyes of someone who believes she's going to survive the night. 7 a.m., October 5th. Kiera wakes up in her childhood bedroom at her mother's house, the same room where she used to feel safe as a little girl. She straps on that bulletproof vest like it's her work uniform, kisses her sleeping mother goodbye, and loads her 3 children into her SUV for what she thinks is just another school drop-off. Her mother would later tell police that Kiera seemed different that morning, quieter, more focused, like someone who knew they were walking into battle. 7:58 a.m. Kiera pulls out of her mother's driveway for the last time. In exactly 12 minutes, she'll be dead. The system that released her killer 24 hours earlier is still sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that their failure is about to play out in front of 3 traumatized children on a Buffalo street corner. 24 hours. That's all it took for justice to become a joke and protection to become a punchline written in a mother's blood. September 28th, 2022. 7:37 p.m. Kiera Hudson's finger hovers over the post button on Facebook, about to share the most horrifying 7.5 minutes of footage that would make seasoned detectives sick to their stomachs. The video shows her own husband beating her like she's his worst enemy, not the mother of his child. But here's what makes this even more twisted. She's not posting this for sympathy or attention. She's posting it because she knows it might be the only evidence left behind when he finally kills her. The surveillance camera in their living room captured everything. Adam Benefield punching Kiera in the face, kicking her while she's curled up on the floor, dragging her around like a rag doll. But the most chilling part isn't the violence. It's how methodical he is about it. He stops between beatings to take photos of her battered face with his phone, like he's documenting his handiwork. This isn't a man who lost control in a moment of rage. This is a predator who enjoys inflicting pain and wants to remember every second of it.
And us this week will mark 2 years since a mother was shot and killed in front of her children in Buffalo, a case that sparked a larger conversation about domestic violence and protections for victims.
It now has renewed attention with Kiera Hudson's family suing the Cheektowaga Police Department, accusing them of failing to step in against her alleged abuser and killer, her husband.
It was October 5th, 2022. You may remember this, when Hudson was shot in her SUV on the corner of Rich Lawn and Shawnee Avenue. Her husband, Adam Benefield, was arrested a week later, charged with second-degree murder. I was there moments after she was killed, and her family told me that the day before her death, Benefield was arrested for allegedly punching and kicking her in their Cheektowaga home. We're told he was released that same day, and her family blamed bail reform for that.
The lawsuit filed by Hudson's mother Tuesday accuses the town of Cheektowaga and its police department of failing to properly charge Benefield and keep him behind bars. That lawsuit says this gave Benefield the opportunity to kill Hudson the next day.
So tonight we're taking a look back at the day Hudson was killed. I spoke with her sister then about Kiera and her efforts to escape her abuser. Plus, I'm giving a voice to a survivor of domestic violence and those working to help people in abusive relationships. It was 2 years ago this week when Kiera Hudson was shot and killed in her SUV in front of her 3 children. Her family told me that day it was her husband, Adam Benefield, who shot her after a long history of domestic abuse.
She's just been trying to get help. I've been with her, going to police stations. She's been texting me, sending me videos.
Montasia Jeter told me back then her sister was so scared she put on a bulletproof vest before leaving her mother's house in Cheektowaga to take her kids to school.
He must have been stalking her. My mom asked her, "Why are you putting that vest on?" She said, "Because, Mom, he's going to kill me. You don't understand." And as soon as she went around the corner, he killed her.
Now, 2 years later, Kiara's family filing a lawsuit against the town of Cheektowaga and its police department, claiming numerous warning signs were ignored. Meanwhile, this case continues to raise awareness about domestic violence.
What we have to remember is Kiara was a human being. She was the daughter. She was a mother.
Catherine Miles Kenya is the CEO of the Family Justice Center, working to help victims of domestic violence.
Well, people in our Western New York area might not know Kiara. They know Kiara's story, but they also have to know that abuse is happening everywhere. It does not discriminate.
The Family Justice Center provides services including help with legal support, finding a shelter, and filing charges.
It's difficult to reconcile the level of violence that we're seeing, the level of injury, the level of hurt and pain. It's also hard to reconcile broken systems that people are navigating.
Ava Thomas knows what it's like to navigate the system. She is a survivor of domestic violence herself.
I tried to navigate everything on my own, keep everything a secret. It nearly cost me my life.
She says she got several orders of protection in different cities and towns.
The initial order that was granted, he broke that several times. I reported it. You report it to whatever jurisdiction the incident happens in.
Her abuser eventually went to prison, and Ava is now working at the Family Justice Center, hoping to prevent more tragedies like what happened to Kiara. The day she was killed, her sister told me it was the system that failed their family.
She said if anything ever happens to her, she will not rest in peace.
I did reach out to the town of Cheektowaga and the Cheektowaga Police Department. The police chief telling me they can't comment on litigation. I have not yet heard back from the town attorney. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there are resources that can help. Those include the Family Justice Center, Erie County Child and Family Services, and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And we have those phone numbers for you at WKVW.com.
The video goes viral within hours. Hundreds of comments pour in. Call the police. Leave him now. We're praying for you. But here's the sick reality about social media activism. All those people typing thoughts and prayers and sharing angry face emojis did absolutely nothing to save Kiara's life. They watched a woman get tortured in real time, hit the share button, and went back to scrolling through cat videos. Their outrage lasted exactly as long as it took to move on to the next post. The footage shows Kiara begging for her life, screaming for help, trying to protect her face, while Adam rains down punches. At one point, she manages to crawl toward the door, probably thinking she can escape. Adam grabs her by the hair and drags her back, telling her she's not going anywhere. The audio picks up him saying, "I should just kill you right now." Words that would prove to be less of a threat and more of a promise he'd keep 7 days later. But here's the part that shows you how broken our system really is. That video, with its crystal clear evidence of attempted murder, resulted in nothing but misdemeanor charges. Prosecutors looked at footage of a man trying to beat his wife to death and decided it wasn't serious enough for felony charges. They watched 7.5 minutes of torture and called it harassment. Meanwhile, people get felony charges for stealing cars or selling drugs, but nearly killing your wife on camera? That's just a misdemeanor. The domestic violence advocate who reached out to Kiara after seeing the video later told reporters that she'd never seen such clear evidence of escalating violence. She begged prosecutors to upgrade the charges, warned them that this man was going to kill his wife, practically drew them a roadmap to prevent a murder. They ignored her completely. The video that should have saved Kiara's life became just another piece of evidence filed away in a system that treats women's lives as disposable. October 3rd, 2022. Kiara posts her final message about the assault. "I was smart enough to get myself out of that situation alive." She thought surviving that beating meant she'd won. She had no idea it was just Adam's dress rehearsal for murder, and the real performance was scheduled for 2 days later. Let me tell you about Adam Benefield's first attempt at murder, because what happened to Kiara wasn't his debut performance. It was a perfected sequel 22 years in the making. March 15th, 2000. 22-year-old Adam is driving a stolen car through Buffalo when he spots his ex-girlfriend's vehicle on Route 33. Instead of moving on with his life like a normal human being, he does something that should have been a warning to every woman who'd ever cross his path. He rams his car directly into hers. The impact sends his ex-girlfriend's car spinning off the highway. But Adam isn't done yet. He jumps out of his stolen vehicle, pulls out a gun, and forces both his ex and her friend into his car at gunpoint. This isn't some crime of passion or moment of lost control. This is a calculated kidnapping executed with military precision. He's got zip ties. He's got a weapon. He's got a plan. The only thing he didn't plan for was one of his victims being brave enough to jump out of a moving car at 50 miles per hour. That's right. His ex-girlfriend chose to leap from a speeding vehicle rather than stay another second with Adam Benefield. Think about that for a moment. She looked at the asphalt rushing by at highway speeds and decided that broken bones and road rash were preferable to whatever Adam had planned for her. She knew him well enough to know that staying in that car meant she was never going home again. The high-speed chase that followed involved multiple police departments and lasted over an hour. Adam drove like a man with nothing to lose, weaving through traffic, running red lights, putting innocent families at risk just to avoid capture. When he finally crashed, police found detailed plans in his car, maps of secluded locations, restraints, tools that suggested this kidnapping was supposed to end very differently. His ex-girlfriend's decision to jump probably saved both women's lives. But here's where Adam Benefield proved he was a special kind of dangerous. 6 months into his prison sentence at the Erie County Correctional Facility in Alden, he scaled a 20-foot wall and escaped. Not through some elaborate tunnel system or corrupt guard scheme. He literally climbed over a wall like it was a backyard fence. For 19 hours, a convicted kidnapper with a history of violence against women was loose on the streets of Buffalo. When police finally tracked him down to a friend's house, Adam was found with self-inflicted cuts on his wrists, claiming he just wanted mental health treatment. But don't let that fool you into thinking this was some cry for help from a troubled young man. This was a manipulator testing the system, learning its weaknesses, figuring out how to work the angles. Every tear, every claim of mental illness, every sob story was just another tool in his arsenal. The 22-year-old Adam, who spoke to reporters in 2000, with his bandaged wrists and claims of needing help, was already perfecting the victim act he'd use to fool Kiera Hudson 15 years later. The doctors refused to get me any help, he told cameras, playing the role of misunderstood patient rather than violent predator. They knew I got problems, and they just don't want to help. Classic abuser playbook. Make yourself the victim even when you're the one holding the gun. Adam served 15 years for that kidnapping and escape. 15 years to think about what went wrong, to plan how he'd do it better next time, to fantasize about the perfect crime. When he was released in 2015, he didn't emerge as a reformed man who'd learned from his mistakes. He emerged as a more sophisticated predator who'd spent over a decade studying his own failures. The pattern was identical. Ram the car, approach the driver's side, use overwhelming force. The only difference was that in 2000, his victim escaped. In 2022, Kiera Hudson was wearing a bulletproof vest and still didn't survive. Adam had spent 22 years perfecting his technique. And this time, he didn't leave anything to chance. October 4th, 2022, 3:27 p.m. A piece of paper gets stamped in Cheektowaga Town Court, an order of protection that's supposed to keep Adam Benefield away from Kiera Hudson. The ink is barely dry when the cruel joke becomes obvious. You're telling a man who escaped from prison and kidnapped women at gunpoint that he needs to stay 500 feet away from his victim? That's like putting up a no trespassing sign to stop a tornado. Here's the legal loophole that killed Kiera Hudson. New York's bail reform laws, designed to prevent poor defendants from rotting in jail for minor crimes, created a deadly blind spot for domestic violence cases. Judges can't consider how dangerous someone is when setting bail for misdemeanor charges, only the specific crime they're charged with right now. So Adam's history of kidnapping, prison escape, and 22 years of documented violence, completely irrelevant in the eyes of the law. The prosecutor knew Adam was going to kill someone. The domestic violence advocate knew Adam was going to kill someone. Kiera's family knew Adam was going to kill someone. The only person who apparently didn't know was the judge who had the power to keep him locked up, because the system decided that Adam's constitutional right to bail was more important than Kiera's constitutional right to stay alive. But here's where it gets even more insane. The charges against Adam were deliberately downgraded to misdemeanors, even though the Facebook video showed clear evidence of felony assault. Prosecutors looked at footage of a man trying to beat his wife to death and decided to charge him with harassment instead of attempted murder. Why? Because felony charges would have meant Adam stayed in jail until trial. Misdemeanor charges meant he walked free the same day. The restraining order itself reads like a legal fairy tale. The defendant shall not assault, threaten, harass, or intimidate the petitioner. Really? You're going to stop a man who kidnapped his ex-girlfriend at gunpoint by asking him nicely to behave? The paper that was supposed to protect Kiara's life had less stopping power than a grocery store receipt. Meanwhile, Kiara is spending her own money on a bulletproof vest because she knows that piece of paper is worthless. Think about the absolute insanity of that situation. A domestic violence victim has to buy military-grade body armor because the justice system can't figure out how to keep a repeat violent offender in jail for more than 3 days. She's literally preparing for war while the courts are playing patty cake with her would-be killer. The order of protection had one useful feature, though. It gave Adam a detailed roadmap of exactly where Kiara would be and when. Court documents listed her mother's address as her safe location, her work schedule, even the school her children attended. The legal system didn't just fail to protect Kiara. It handed her stalker a GPS coordinate to her exact location and a timeline of her daily routine. 18 hours and 33 minutes. That's how long Kiara's order of protection lasted before Adam violated it by putting a bullet through her skull. The paper that promised to keep her safe became evidence in her murder case, filed away in a folder marked System Failure that nobody in the courthouse will ever bother to read. Protection orders work great against law-abiding citizens who respect authority. They're completely useless against predators who've already proven they'll do anything to hurt the women they claim to love. 8:10 a.m., October 5th, 2022. 3 children are buckled into their car seats, probably arguing about who gets to sit by the window or complaining about having to go to school early. The oldest is 5 years old, just learning to read. The middle child is barely walking. The baby is 6 months old, still drinking from bottles and sleeping through most car rides. In 30 seconds, all 3 of them are going to witness their mother's execution, and their childhood dies with her. The impact comes first, Adam's car slamming into their SUV from the front, sending their mother's vehicle spinning across Richland Avenue. The 5-year-old probably thinks it's just an accident at first, maybe even exciting like something from a movie. But then a man gets out of the other car, and it's not a stranger coming to help. It's Adam, the man who used to live in their house, walking toward their mother's door with something in his hand. What happens next will haunt these children for the rest of their lives. Their mother, the woman who kissed their scraped knees and read them bedtime stories, gets shot in the head 3 feet away from them. The bulletproof vest she wore to protect herself becomes meaningless when the bullet enters through her skull instead of her chest. Her blood splatters across the dashboard, the windows, probably their clothes and car seats. The baby doesn't understand what's happening, but babies can sense terror. The screaming, the sudden silence from mommy, the smell of gunpowder and blood, all of it gets burned into developing neural pathways that will trigger panic attacks for decades. That 6-month-old will grow up having nightmares about sounds and smells they can't consciously remember but will never forget. The 5-year-old sees everything, watches their mother's head explode, sees Adam walk away like he just finished taking out the trash, hears their baby sibling crying in a car seat now decorated with brain matter. This child will spend the rest of their life wondering if they could have done something, said something, somehow saved mommy from the monster who used to bring them presents. But here's the part that makes this tragedy even more devastating. These 3 children didn't just lose their mother that morning. They lost their entire sense of safety in the world. The man who murdered their mom wasn't some random stranger or masked intruder. It was someone they knew, someone who'd lived in their house, someone their mother had trusted enough to marry. If mommy couldn't protect herself from someone she loved, how can anyone ever be safe from anyone? The middle child, barely old enough to form complete sentences, will grow up with fragmented memories of the day mommy stopped talking. Therapy sessions, court hearings, family members whispering about what happened. Their entire childhood will be defined by this single moment of violence they were too young to process, but old enough to remember. 3 children, 3 different developmental stages, but all of them now carrying the same burden. They're the witnesses to their mother's murder, the survivors of their father figure's rampage, and the living proof that our system's failure has consequences that last generations. 8:15 a.m., October 5th, 2022. Adam Benefield walks away from Kiera's bullet-riddled SUV like he just finished grocery shopping, gets back in his car, and drives off into Buffalo traffic. 3 traumatized children are screaming in a vehicle splattered with their mother's blood, and their killer is already planning his next move. This isn't panic or flight response. This is calculated escape from someone who's thought through every detail except how to live with what he's done. Within minutes, every police radio in Erie County is crackling with the same message. Armed and extremely dangerous suspect. Consider him capable of anything. But Adam Benefield isn't hiding in some abandoned warehouse or fleeing to another state. He's moving through Buffalo like a ghost, using 22 years of criminal experience to stay invisible. This is a man who once escaped from prison by scaling a wall. Disappearing into a city of 250,000 people is child's play. The manhunt becomes a community effort within hours. Kiera's story spreads across social media faster than any missing person alert the police could issue. Her sister's Facebook posts about the bulletproof vest, the surveillance video of the beating, the 3 children who watched their mother die. It all goes viral in the most tragic way possible. Suddenly, everyone in Buffalo is looking for Adam Benefield, and he can't show his face anywhere without someone recognizing him. Day 3 of the manhunt. Tips are pouring in from across the city. Someone saw him at a gas station. Another person spotted him near the waterfront. A homeless shelter worker thinks he came by for food. Each lead sends police racing across town. But Adam stays one step ahead. He's not just running from the law. He's playing a game he's been perfecting since he was 22 years old. October 12th, 2022. 1 week after murdering his wife, Adam Benefield's luck finally runs out. A community member spots him on Bissell Avenue and calls 911 immediately. This isn't some anonymous tip called in from a safe distance. This is a neighbor who looked evil in the face and decided to do something about it. Within minutes, police units are surrounding the area like they're hunting a terrorist. The arrest footage shows Adam Benefield exactly as he is. A coward who only shows courage when he's beating defenseless women. Surrounded by officers with weapons drawn, he doesn't resist, doesn't fight, doesn't show any of the rage he unleashed on Kiera. He lies face down in the grass, hands behind his back, looking like any other pathetic criminal who got caught. 7 days, 4 hours, and 37 minutes. That's how long it took to capture a man who thought he could murder a mother of 3 and disappear forever. The community that failed to save Kiera's life succeeded in making sure her killer would never hurt another woman again. Here's what could have saved Kiera Hudson's life, and why every single failure point makes me sick to my stomach. First, the prosecutor who looked at 7.5 minutes of torture footage and decided to file misdemeanor charges instead of attempted murder should be held personally responsible for her death. That video showed clear evidence of felony assault, but they chose the easy path that let a killer walk free. Second, New York's bail reform laws need an emergency exception for domestic violence cases with documented escalation patterns. Any judge should have the power to look at Adam's history of kidnapping and prison escape and say, this man doesn't get bail, period. Constitutional rights don't mean anything when you're dead, and Kiera's right to life should have trumped Adam's right to pretrial freedom. Third, the order of protection system is a complete joke that gives victims false hope while providing their killers with detailed instructions on where to find them. Either make these orders enforceable with real consequences, or stop pretending they offer any protection at all. A piece of paper didn't stop Adam 22 years ago, and it sure didn't stop him from executing his wife in front of their children. But here's the most important prevention point of all. Every person who watches this story and doesn't subscribe is voting for silence over justice. You're telling the algorithm that domestic violence content doesn't deserve amplification, that Kiera's story should disappear into the void, while dance videos get millions of views. If you think that's too harsh, drop a comment explaining why her children should grow up in a world where nobody talks about what happened to their mother. Every scroll past without engagement is complicit in the next tragedy. Every view without a subscription tells the system that women's lives don't matter enough to boost this content. Prove me wrong, or prove my point by staying silent. Either way, you've made your choice about what kind of world you want to live in.